continuity in healthcare services and reduction in maternal and neonatal morbidity and mortality. So, dear friends, we have already conducted first webinar on antenatal care and preparation of labor room. So, if you still have questions, you can write to us and we will be happy to respond. Today, we have a webinar on postpartum care in COVID-19 suspect or positive patient by Dr. Meenakshi Rohila, who's a professor in the Department of Obs and Gynae PGI, and on newborn care in COVID-19 suspect or positive patients by Dr. Shiv Sadhan Saini, who is a professor of neonatology in Advanced Pediatric Center, PGI MER, Chandigarh. If you have any questions during the session, please do write in the chat section. We'll be happy to respond. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Meenakshi Rohila for her session on postpartum care in COVID-19 suspect or positive patients. Thank you. Dr. Meenakshi, you can share your screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, please start from slide 1. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, good afternoon, everyone. We know this is the timing of pandemic going on, and I think this is the one of the word that will be the most commonly used word in the history of 2020, and that is coronavirus infection. Okay, so we are going to discuss postpartum care today in COVID-19 suspect or a positive patients. So as we all know, this is caused by a new strain of coronavirus causing COVID-19, SARS COVID-19 too, and it is spread by respiratory secretions, feces, and fomites. As we all know, mainly it has been seen in the non-pregnant so far. Pregnant women are not more likely to contract the infection than in the general population, but still there are certain facts that shows that pregnant woman is more susceptible to this infection because of certain physiological changes and relatively immunosuppression in the pregnancy. However, there are no reports so far that has shown that it causes vertical transmission also. So after discussing about the effect of disease on pregnancy, what are the effects of pregnancy on disease? The pregnancy itself, disease is not aggravated by pregnancy unless it is associated with other morbid conditions in pregnancy like respiratory, cardiac, and metabolic disorders, and or any immunodeficiency condition if she has in pregnancy. So before we start the postpartum care of a COVID suspect or confirmed pregnant patient, it is very important to know certain aspects that are always there, and that is it is a right of all women to have a quality care that includes the antenatal, intrapartum, and as well as postpartum care. And that is true for it is irrespective of the COVID infection pandemic, and that includes a respectful skilled care, including obstetric, fetal medicine, and neonatal care as well. And it includes a mental health and psychological support, especially in the time when there is a pandemic going on with the deadly virus infection. And anytime readiness to care for any maternal neonatal complication should also be there in this quality care. So whenever we talk about a maternity care approach, it is as same as it is given to any pregnant woman at any time. But in this pandemic, if we talk about, the important thing is to not to give care to a pregnant woman as well as it is very important to give important care to a healthcare provider and a complete healthcare system also. So it is a basically three-pronged approach to take care of everybody who is around the pregnant woman. So before we start our postpartum care, it is very important for all of us to know who are suspect and who are COVID confirmed patients. So according to ICMR these days, as we all aware of, it's a recent testing strategy that has been, in this strategy, it has been decided that all women who are coming from hotspot or containment zone and likely to deliver in 5 days, even if they are asymptomatic, they should be tested for COVID infection. So we are already doing this testing since 3-4 days in our department also, and we are, until unless the report is not available, we are treating them as a suspect cases. And if the woman is clearly positive, this will be shifted to our designated hospital area, that is the Nehru Hospital Extension. So far, we have not get any positive pregnant woman, but most of the patients are in the category of suspect and suspect of COVID infection. So for that category, we have planned to shift these patients if they are symptomatic in a CD ward, that is a designated area in the Nehru building. And if they are suspected asymptomatic, they will be kept in a different area that has been made as an isolation area in a 3rd floor maternity ward area. And as I said, there is a separate hospital also for COVID positive women, and this is the Nehru Hospital Extension area. So, starting with the postpartum care, as we have discussed, most of the patient comes into the category of suspect COVID infection, and the patient who has been diagnosed as positive COVID infection, she will be shifted to a NHE, and if she is having a severe disease, definitely she will be under a ICU care, where the strict fluid balance and vitus monitoring will be under this protocol of this ICU care, and she'll be in the NHE. If she does not fit into the confirmed COVID category, she will definitely be with us, and she will be managed in a different area, as I enumerated earlier. And as far as the care is concerned, most of the care is a general nursing care with certain important points that can be considered in relation to a coronavirus infection. There are certain drugs that are we have to be cautious to use in this suspected infection. There are some points about the diet also, and there are certain rumors also about the diet, and there are certain issues about the breastfeeding also. And after all, doing all delivery and cesarean section, it is very important to see that area is clean and the facilities are maintained and medical equipment are disinfectant and has been used with the disinfectant, and they are clean now for the next case. And the planning of discharge is also one of the very important thing in this scenario. So for a confirmed COVID patient who, as I said, who must be in the NHE area, if she is already diagnosed, she must be on the drugs that has been advised by our higher authorities, and the international bodies also, to start them on HCQ and azithromycin if they are clearly confirmed cases. And it has been advised to give them this treatment for 10 days. If they have not been started, it will be started, or they are already on, they will be continued during postpartum care. There are certain issues regarding the use of NSAID in pregnancy. Of course, a postpartum woman definitely may require any kind of analgesia for pain in episiotomy or the suture line pain after the cesarean section. So in this scenario, we may need analgesic. So it has been said in the reports that paracetamol is the preferred drug. However, we should avoid other NSAIDs like ibuprofen, because it has been said that they act through ACE receptors, and the infection has also been said that coronavirus infection starts through, when it enters the cell, it starts through ACE receptors. So it's better we avoid this other NSAIDs. So if a woman who is, we notice that she's having difficulty in breathing after delivery and she needs some oxygen, she should definitely be administered oxygen. Although we should see that we avoid aerosolization, we don't give a nebulization to her. And at this time, we can reevaluate the patient status, and we can still think of shifting her to a ICU area if she is not in the ICU area at the time of delivery. The other thing is about the antibiotic. Many times we start our postpartum patients on antibiotic, maybe a 1 or 2 dose, so she can be continued on the same antibiotic as we give in any non-COVID infection pregnancy. So it is the same as in the other women. It is about the diet, few points. There is no particular diet that has been recommended to treat or use in this infection. A general dietary advice should be given that includes a high protein diet and vitamin and micronutrient supplementation. And overall, we can say that a woman should be on a balanced diet. And the hospital supply is also one of the balanced diet, and that is being given to all COVID positive at NHE and in our area also, where the women, suspected women are there in our Nehru building. And we should condemn certain rumors also, that is about the non-vegetarian diet, that they are higher risk of carrying infection. That is absolute rumor. There are certain issues about the breastfeeding also. So far, we have evidence of 6 Chinese cases only, in which it was seen that there was no virus infection was there in the breast milk, or it was never seen in the amniotic fluid also. So it was said that it does not cause any vertical transmission or a transmission through breast milk. So on basis of these report, and considering that breast milk is one of the best source of nutrition and immunity for the infant, most of the bodies are recommending and encouraging breastfeeding for newborn, including UNFPA and RCOG. But the CDC says that this small report should not be, it should be considered with a pinch of salt, and we should not go totally on the basis of this only, because we know that the main risk for the infant of breastfeeding is the close contact with the mother, who is also likely to share infective airborne droplet. So CDC basically recommends for the separation of mother and newborn, although Dr. Sarjan probably is going to give say something detail about this. But the breast milk has been always considered as one of the best source, and breastfeeding has been told as a media to have a bonding between a mother and a newborn. So it has been encouraged by many bodies to continue breastfeeding. And CDC says that we still do not have enough evidence. So we can consider if a woman, a woman should be counseled before we take a decision of exclusive breastfeeding, that what are the risks and benefits of breastfeeding at this time. So if she agrees for the breastfeeding, we should definitely support her. But if she does not agree, we should respect this also. And express breast milk feeding is also one of the options that can be taken at this moment. So if a woman wishes to breastfeed, she should definitely wash her hands before, and any other routine hygienic practice that we follow in this time of pandemic. The mother should practice respiratory hygiene by wearing a mask, and should try not to sneeze in front of the baby during breastfeeding. If a mother wishes expressing breast milk with a manual or electric breast pump, hygienic practices should be same as otherwise. So a woman with COVID-19 infection can breastfeed if she wishes to do so, and with all hygienic practices like wearing a mask, practices hygiene, washing hands, and routinely cleaning other surfaces also. And suppose if a mother is too ill to breastfeed, she should be encouraged to breast milk following the respiratory and hand hygienic practices. And we can take the help of someone who is well to feed expressed, and who is well to feed express breast milk to the baby. And we will suggest a nursing officer in this scenario. So express breast milk with proper hygienic practices is definitely another option to have in this patient. So coming to the testing of the cases, Dr. Sarjan will cover this, but it has been recommended by our national body, that is FOXI, that all babies for the COVID confirmed cases should be tested for this infection, and they should be under follow-up and ongoing surveillance for this. So a woman who is isolated from the neonate, she should definitely be offered a psychological assessment and support, and she should definitely be given better mental health and psychological support to other family members, community and health workers, especially in this time of worry, where every patient and the relative is concerned about the infection to a patient as well as to the relatives. So after having conducting a delivery or a cesarean is one of the most important. Now the next aspect is the cleaning, maintenance of facility and equipments. So any isolation area where the delivery has been conducted or any procedure has been conducted, and the surgical area where the delivery was or cesarean was conducted, they should all be considered as a potential sources of infection. And during the cleaning of these area, all healthcare workers should be in a proper personal protective equipments. So the cleaning agent that we can use to clean this area, that may be a alcohol based agent that contains 70% isopropyl alcohol, or it may be a chlorine based solution, which are should be freshly prepared, or it should be a 1% sodium hypochlorite solution. The contact time of these solutions should be at least 30 minutes. All floors, walls and object surfaces should be wiped with these solutions. Any biological fluid, blood, fecal matter or placenta should be treated with the above solution before sending for the disposal. It is a very important point to be noted, because in a delivery or cesarean section area, this is one of the area where too much fluid is there, that is maybe a potentially infectious, and should be sent with the proper disinfectant. So if you notice a large fluid spill, a sodium hypochlorite powder should be spread over the spill and left in contact for 30 minutes before the cleaning, as we do in any infected delivery or cesarean section in any infected case, like in a HIV positive and in a HCV positive infection, woman who is delivering in the labor room, or she is having cesarean section in the OT. So the all reusable medical equipments and linen, fabrics and clothes should also be treated with sodium hypochlorite before they are processed further. Regarding PPE, as of now we are single time use PPE. So we won't be using this, but there are certain things in the PPE like screen shield, boots, and goggles that we will be reusing them. So they will be definitely cleaned with this and treated with this before they are sent for reuse. Air can be sterilized by fumigation or sterilizer, or by ultraviolet lamps if we have availability of these things. The issues regarding the discharge, it has been very clearly said although there's nothing recommendation in our national bodies, but in our international bodies like ACOG and RCOG, they all recommend that in order to limit the risk of infection to themselves, staff and other patients, the patient should be discharged in an expedite and a safe fashion. Why did I specifically say it is a safe fashion? We should consider early discharge in an uncomplicated postpartum woman, but we should be very sure that she may not require any further visit because of any complication that go unnoticed. We have to be very sure about this. And all vaginal delivery should have a goal of discharge on postpartum day 1 instead of 48 hours period. So far we were considering this period of 48 hours till now, because this is our protocol in our hospital, that we were discharging all patients in a period of 48 hours or so, if a woman undergoes a uncomplicated normal vaginal delivery. And all cesarean delivery should have a goal of discharge on postpartum day 2. It is according to our international guidelines. However, we may see our conditions, and we may see more or less or same, and definitely we can see that if the patient is absolutely fine, she's not having any anticipated complication at this time, and she's well versed, and she's understanding all the situation, and she's locally staying, we can definitely plan to discharge her at the earliest possible. Proper pre-discharge assessment, as I say, of mother and baby must be done to ensure that there are no complications. And general advice, as on any general population at this time, like on hygiene and social distancing, she should continue doing this. And any other small ailments like breast engorgement or any other problem she undergoes in the pain in the stitch line, we can contact her with the teleconferencing, or any telephonic consultation can also be given for this. So few lines about the contraception also. It should be very clearly displayed at the health facilities that the routine contraceptive services cannot be given at this time. There should be a delayed availability of ICDs and sterilization service until routine services are resumed. So far we have not displayed because there are very less women in our scenario who ask for actual contraception. And definitely we are not giving ICDs at this time to post-placental ICDs. We are not giving to women at this time. And but definitely we are advising all our women, postpartum women, to adopt barrier contraception like condoms, and we are advising them to have a telephonic consultation, and after 2 weeks or so, regarding the consultation about other contraceptive methods, if they are fine and if they are found to be comfortable, they can be advised accordingly. But definitely in the period of infection where all women are suspected to have infection and potentially they are infectious, it is not a wise idea to advise them for intrauterine contraceptive devices or any operative procedures like permanent sterilization services. So after doing all this, conducting delivery and going through this safe delivery and operative delivery, maybe it's a period of psychological stress and burnout of the healthcare workers. After doing all this, it is with all this PPE, and it is a tedious process to conduct delivery and to dispose of all the infected material. So in that scenario, we should encourage our whole team, and we should appreciate after doing all this. That also comes into the postpartum care, and so we should keep the team spirit high after doing all this delivery and procedures. And encouragement can be done in the terms of provision of good meals, and that's a very important part to boost morale. And we should be having some point to have health insurance also, that our government is considering so. So, what are the key messages for this presentation? The postpartum care of a COVID-19 suspect or an infected woman is a multidisciplinary team approach, and it provides safe and effective. It is our duty to provide safe and effective maternity care to women, irrespective of the COVID pandemic. It is our duty to provide safe and effective maternity care to women, including postpartum care. It is our duty to give protect our all healthcare workers, in apart from women, a pregnant woman who's delivering, and our goal should be a early and safe discharge, and all postpartum care that which we think patient may develop after discharge, like on day 2 or 3, can be dealt with the teleconferencing or a teleconsultation during this pandemic time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi. That was really insightful, and we have a question also that we will take up during the panel discussion. So I hope audience must have learned about postpartum care who are admitted in the hospital. Moving on to our next session, I invite Dr. Shiv Sajan Saini, who is the assistant professor in neonatology division of Department of Pediatrics at Advanced Pediatric Center, PGIMER, Chandigarh, for taking the next section on newborn care in a COVID-19 positive case or a suspect case. Dr. Sajan.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu.
Dr. Meenakshi, please stop sharing your screen.
Okay. It's okay?
No, the screen which you had shared, no, for the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, fine.
So
fine.
just, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My screen is visible, ma'am?
It is visible. Just make it full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Am I audible? Hello.
You are audible.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can start.
So good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be dealing with newborn care in COVID-19 patients. while the number of patients, neonatal patients with COVID-19 are significantly less as compared to the adults and children, and their outcomes are comparatively better. But at the same time, drawing big conclusions from the limited data we have as of now can be, can be harmful, and therefore we should be conversant with nitty-gritties of the neonatal care, and we should be extremely cautious while managing such scenarios. So I will be discussing about the important clinical scenarios that we encounter in neonates, the management and the continued postnatal care, postpartum care, postnatal care and lactation issues related to vaccination, etc. So there can be four situations which neonatologists might have to deal with. These are neonates. These are the mothers who have COVID positive, came for delivery. Mothers who are suspect. Neonates who are COVID positive and presented to hospital with morbidities, and neonates who are suspect. So let's deal with these situations one by one. When a mother comes with, the first is the mother who is coming with proven COVID positivity. So in the as we have heard previously, the antepartum care should be given in the isolation facility. The delivery should be conducted in the separate facility, and so while conducting the newborn resuscitation, I'll be discussing about some broad principles, attire, and procedures. So to begin with, you must be familiar by now that we need to have a special attire as far as the to prevent the droplet infections and aerosols, to prevent aerosols, and these include N95 mask, fluid resistant coveralls, gloves long enough to cover cuffs, and there will be layer of gloves which you will be wearing, goggles and face shields, and leg cover. So as to protect, the principle is to protect our body from top to bottom from the droplet infections and aerosols generated in the procedures. So the broad principles of resuscitation are that you have to have a minimum possible number of resuscitators available for the resuscitation. But at the same time, they should be safe. The number should be safe enough to conduct the deliveries. And how to balance these two scenarios? The crux lies in the individuals who are going for neonatal resuscitation. They should be skilled enough to carry resuscitation from beginning to end of the resuscitation. Because there are many steps that are happening in the management of COVID positive neonates or patients. It starts from donning, then it starts from going to resuscitation, assembling things, then doing the resuscitation, then stabilizing the baby, preparing the baby for transport, coming back to the facilities, isolation facilities, and doffing. So there are many steps which are there in between while carrying out these activities. So unless one is very prepared to carry out these activities, it is difficult to remember all the steps, and one can commit mistakes and therefore will be exposed to potential health hazard. So what is the way out to be better preparedness is simulations and mock drills. While simulation prepare you for the activities and carrying out the complex activities in a coordinated manner, the mock drills also take you through all the procedures one by one in the sequential fashions. And hence, if you carry out these activities regularly with your healthcare staff in your hospital settings, then the healthcare staff, not only they will be more, more stable, while less panicky, less anxious while carrying out these deliveries. At the same time, they will be less exposed to the potential health hazard, and they will be safe, and their morale will be boosted. A regular debriefing should be done by the senior person, and which can improve the lacunae of the previous sessions, and therefore we can be better prepared for the subsequent session and actual deliveries which are taking place. While we are going for the delivery, the equipment should be checked a priori. The equipments should be all be in the working order, because it will be a very panicky situation, especially because we are wearing coveralls and we will not be able to auscultate the child in that particular scenario. So the equipment check should be very clear, and pulse oximeter should be there, which will be through which you can get the heart rate of the baby and the saturation of the baby, and you can check whether the resuscitation procedures is working or not. While as you have heard in the previous talk, while a lot of the bodies recommending delayed cord clamping and breastfeeding, etc., I will be discussing them one by one. The delayed cord clamping is recommended by the British guidelines, and RCPCH as well as RCOG says that you should practice delayed cord clamping. However, and which is probably based on the fact that the number of vertical transmissions, the number of neonates who have been evaluated for vertical transmissions are so far we have not detected any virus in amniotic fluid, in placenta. So based on these limited data, these agencies have concluded that probably delayed cord clamping is safe and can be instituted in day-to-day scenarios wherever the indication exists. However, we should understand that although with the vertical transmission risk is has said to be low, but it is there is still dilemma in the nobody can say for sure with the limited data that there is no vertical transmission risk, and hence if you expose the baby longer there when the situations are so fluid, our understanding is evolving, it will be very difficult to dogmatically say that delayed cord clamping should be practiced. Therefore, the IAP or FOGSI and IAP recommendations, a joint statement has appeared a few days back, and that says that the immediate cord clamping should be done rather than the delayed cord clamping. Well, our understanding is evolving. It is possible that after some time, when we have enough data, there might be DCC might be a standard of care. But as of now, immediate cord clamping is what is. It's a recommendation as far as India is concerned. While the vital signs, during the resuscitation, the progression of the the activities is similar as per the NRP. It starts with maintenance of temperature to the airway and breathing and circulation. So the peculiar issues in these circumstances is the temperature issues. We all know that many of these babies are bound to be the late preterms and early terms, which may be exposed to the at the risk of hypothermia. And why I'm saying that exposed to the risk of hypothermia, person units are at risk during the the COVID-19 deliveries. All the healthcare professional, they are equipped with the layers of personal protective equipments, and hence the ACs, which are air conditioner temperatures, which are set according to adults. It is invariably you can find that the temperatures are somewhere in between the ranges of 16 to 20, and in those scenarios the neonate is bound to be hypothermic if we don't take due care in the for the hypothermia. So the resuscitation corner should be at least 2 meters away from the mother's delivery table. B, you should take care that the exhaust, the AC draught of air through the AC vent should not directly be coming to the resuscitation facility. 3, there should not be much traffic where the neonatal resuscitation is been carrying out. So it should be there, preferably in the corner where the draught of airs are not coming, and the warmer should be running at the full 100% heater output capacity and should be switched on at least 10 to 15 minutes before the birth of the baby. The rest is the sequence of next is the sequence in the sequence of resuscitation is the airway management and the breathing, and this is particularly important, and one must give due importance to these two activities. And why so? Why I say so? That during there will be many procedures in the airway maintenance, like for example suctioning, or during the breathing, for example positive pressure ventilation, endotracheal intubation, which may be associated, which are a potential aerosol generating procedures. And what are aerosol generating procedures? Wherever you do certain intervention which hastens the production of the aerosols, and we all know that aerosol is the carrier of viruses and can carry the aerosols, can be there suspended in the air for some 6 to 8 hours, maybe even longer, and hence the healthcare professionals may be exposed to those aerosols, and therefore one care should be taken to minimize these procedures and do these procedures optimally. There is silver lining in the while doing this procedure in neonatology, that the neonates are we deal with low tidal volumes in neonates, and the low there is usually the low viral load in neonates, but that does not make healthcare professionals safe for the aerosols. That there will be still aerosols, there will be still chances of presence of virus in those aerosols, and hence there is potential health hazard. Hence you should make sure that your suction pressures are 80 to 100. Do suctions very gently only when it is needed. During the positive pressure ventilation, use adequate seal. There should be no compromise on the seal. Make the sniffing, put the baby in sniffing position, take all open the mouth, put the face mask covering the chin, nose, and mouth, and then do the positive pressure ventilation, minimizing taking care of C and E procedures and all. So detail are beyond the scope. So needless to say that you need to do due precautions while doing positive pressure ventilation. While doing ET intubations, also one should be very careful. One way out for doing these procedures is people have customized the acrylic hoods, which can add to the barrier between yourself and the baby. And one such type of acrylic hood you can see in my background. I hope you're able to see this. So these are the hoods which we have prepared with the help of the local engineering facility. It has two openings through which where the this is how the hood is placed. The baby is there on this end, and the resuscitator is standing on this end, and there are two. The resuscitator can access the baby through these two openings, and the rest suction facilities and rest of the oxygen facility can be there in the side hole. So these type of things can be prepared which add to your protection while doing the procedures. Additional the additional layer of protection can come from the viral filters, which are popularly known as heat moisture exchanger filters, or HME filters, which can be combined in which can be put in between the so in this right hand of the screen you can see the ambu bag, and on the left hand side there is face mask, and in between the two you can put the HME filter. Now these filters can significantly reduce the viral loads, and hence it is preferable if you get hold of these viral filters you can use while doing while doing resuscitations, and this can also be used while doing the while doing the ventilations, as we will discuss subsequently. While you give oxygen to these babies, if you are giving oxygen at a very high flow rate, like less than 2 liters per minute, then it is equivalent to high flow nasal cannula. Sorry, more than 2 liters per minute is equivalent to high flow nasal cannula. And we all understand that high flow nasal cannula and CPAP and non-invasive ventilation, they are also potential aerosol generating procedures. So we must give oxygen at a very low flow rate, less than 2 liters per minute. While doing chest compression, one should intubate the baby, because it will be very, very difficult to coordinate the chest compression while doing positive pressure ventilation through bag and mask, and hence there will be a huge risk of generating the aerosols. So these are some of the the fine points which you should keep in mind while minimizing the risk of aerosols while doing these procedures. So after the baby is resuscitated, the baby should be maintained, the temperature is maintained, and further on the baby should be moved to the facility. And before discussing all this, let us discuss what are the vertical transmission rates of neonates. So neonate can be infected by two methods. One is vertical transmission, which means that the infection is transmitted from mother to baby. And another is horizontal transmission, which means that baby acquires infection from the environment, or from healthcare professionals, or from the contacts which are not healthcare. So basically, not from the mother, but other sources which are included in the environment. So let us see whether there is any vertical transmission, any risk of vertical transmission or not. So this is a busy slide. I don't want you to go through these slides. Just focus on the red numbers. So these are some of the studies. This is not an exhaustive list. These are some of the studies which have recently been published, mainly from China, but from other parts of the world as well. And these are some. There are some review which have been done, which have taken all over the. This is published from AJOG recently. So there are some 38 mothers, 55 mothers, 4 mothers, 2 cases. So limited number of mothers. And once they have found, they have evaluated a proportion of neonates. Not all neonates were analyzed, and they have done their, many have undergone amniotic fluid and breast milk and placental testing, but not all. So our information is limited. But based on this limited information, till date, the vertical transmission is not been proven. So they could not identify any virus from the amniotic fluid or uh, placental specimens. But so there is a word of caution. The data is limited till date. There are some papers which have given the neonatal data or neonatal COVID positive data. So this is one such paper, and the other are available in a maybe anecdotal case report or a newspaper clipping. So this is one report which was published recently, and in this report, this report shows 4 patients or 4 neonates, which range from 30 hours to 17 days. Some of them were symptomatic, but there was a neonate which was asymptomatic, and they were all had a very good outcome. There were no adverse effects, and they had a hospital stay of 16 to 30 days, and they all had a good outcome, and they were discharged. So but this is important to note that one of these neonate was as early as 30 hours they could identify um, COVID positivity in a neonate. They could not dogmatically prove, they could not say that, they could not prove that it is vertical infection, but the risk of vertical infection cannot be ruled out. So because there is a risk, so we need to immediately, isolate these babies from the mother. Now, it is important to understand that many bodies, including WHO, CDC, infant and young child feeding, and RCPCH, etc., they are recommending that you keep the baby, don't separate the baby. You keep the baby on the mother, close contact with the mother, and continue breastfeeding. So I have for your information, I have taken the report from WHO, which was published only 2 days back. So there are few questions which you can see on the, and I have highlighted the points to be stressed upon. In communities where COVID-19 is prevalent, should the mothers breastfeed? Yes. Following delivery, should the baby still immediately placed skin to skin and breastfeeds? Yes. And should it continue, breastfeeding be continued? Yes. However, we must understand this data is based on the limited number of neonates which I have shown in the previous slides, and hence it is very, very difficult to say that this does not exist, but these transmission through breast milk and other things does not exist. Well, breast milk has there is a more data available for breast milk, but vertical transmission, as I've said, it is very difficult to say as of now. uh, it is important to understand that once these agencies are recommending the immediate close contact, skin to skin contact, and breastfeeding,
Hello. Hello. Yes, Dr. Shiv, you can continue, please.
hello.
I think, yeah, you can continue showing your screen. Something, I think, internet, some problem with the internet probably at your end. You can continue showing your screen.
Hello.
Are you able to share your screen now? Hello, Dr. Shiv, are you able to share your screen? Yeah.
So am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, now you are audible. Please continue. Please continue, Dr. Shiv. We can hear you.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible? Okay. 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 Thank you. So sorry for the technical glitch. So there should be a separate facility where mothers are taken care of. The mothers are maintaining the safe distance from each other. The mother should be taking care of hygienic measures. There should be dedicated nursing support available to take care of the baby. There should be at least 2 meter distance. The baby should be taken care, should be cared at least 2 meter distance from the mother and brought to the mother whenever baby need to be breastfed, etc. And the caregiver, if available, should be apart from the birth partner or apart from the close contacts of the mother who are likely to be uh, COVID positive. Now, these are very stringent requirements which are very difficult to be met, especially in the developing countries like us, and hence the practically it will not be possible to institute the guidelines recommended by WHO, IVCF, etc., and large bodies. So the Indian Academy of Pediatrics recommends, and FOGSI recommends, immediate isolation of these babies from the mother. While doing the transport, the considerations include you should transport in incubators, because still the neonate can through procedure. You might require certain procedures, suction, etc. on the way. Intubation might be required on the way, depending upon the sickness of the baby. And en route, the person should be donned. The healthcare professional who is accompanying the baby should be donned with full personal protective equipment. Uh, Further, postnatal care depends upon the two scenarios, whether the baby is asymptomatic or the baby is symptomatic. Well, initial management is not different, because both of these, whether baby is asymptomatic or symptomatic, is going to go to the similar facility, isolation facility, and all these babies will be considered as infective, and they will be isolated and in the isolation nursery. So practically, once you deal with these, all the cases, there can be three scenarios. You have to run three type of facilities. One is where healthy facilities where there is no COVID positivity, just like we were doing before the onset of this COVID epidemic. The second type of facility which we have to create is COVID positive. So if the babies are COVID positive, then they have to be shifted to the separate facility which deal with COVID positive children or neonates. The third facility is indeterminate, when mothers like suspect mothers are coming and the babies are delivered, there is no report available, or even the COVID positive mothers have delivered, but the baby is reports are not available. So this type of facilities, you need to run three type of facilities, and the initial management is whether the baby is asymptomatic and symptomatic is same. The baby should be isolated. The persons or healthcare professionals who are caring for the babies, they should wear personal protective equipment and take all precautions as we have discussed previously. The COVID testing to be done on the babies, I will discuss shortly how the testing is to be done. But if on testing the baby is positive, the baby can, sorry for the typographical error, the baby can stay with the mother if baby is asymptomatic, or if the baby is symptomatic, the baby can go to the the baby should stay in the isolation facility, or can be discharged depending upon the facilities available. If there is someone to take care of the baby and the baby is baby can be discharged. If the baby is negative, the baby can be discharged. Such a baby can be discharged home. If the baby, however, the baby is symptomatic, the baby should be taken care in the separate nursery with full personal protective equipment. Baby should be taken care in the incubator, and we should take care of the aerosol generating procedures as we have discussed previously. The sampling of the baby should be minimized. Now, this is important that there should be as least less number of the people present in the nursery as possible. The unnecessary sampling should be minimized. Unnecessary procedures should be minimized, and all baby should be attached to the monitors, which then and all possible ways or innovations to be arrangements to be done to minimize the physical contact with the baby. Like for example, the monitoring can be done with the monitors attached to the baby, and reasonable and good quality monitors can be attached to the baby. The oxygen, CPAP, ventilation if is required. If you require oxygen, the flow rates should be less than 2 liters per minute, as more than 2 liters are equivalent to high flow, which is aerosol generating procedure. If you are using CPAP, then the expiratory limb of the CPAP should be there inside the incubator, preferably. If not, then outside. And you can consider the use of heat moisture exchanger filters if you are doing ventilation in the expiratory limb, which will safeguard you for potential the virus aerosols. After the after all the during all the procedures, and then to maintain the safety, the housekeeping procedure should be upregulated, and I will discuss subsequently in the subsequent slide about the housekeeping procedures. And the biomedical waste disposal should be a very, very critical step, because that will also help in minimizing the spread of virus and potential aerosols. So first is neonatal sampling. So when the neonate should be sampled? So neonate should be sampled once at 48 hours, between 48 hours to 72 hours, and on day 5. To declare whether the baby is the COVID positive or not. So sampling procedure is you should send 2 swabs. And why 2 swabs in neonates? Because the receptors are less well developed, the viral load is less, so you have to have a bigger sample volume to say whether the neonate is infected or not. So what you need to send is, you need to send a nasopharyngeal swab and an oropharyngeal swab from each baby, from one baby. So the procedure is that you take the nasopharyngeal swab, and the swab is a the nylon stick, and at the end of the stick there is cotton attached. So you pass this swab parallel to the palate through the nasal floor to the nasopharyngeal area, which should be equivalent to the border of the nose to outer part of the ear, and should be at least 3 to 4 centimeters high inside the nose of the baby. And it should stay there for some time, and then rotate it so that good amount of mucus is adhered to the swab. The second swab is oropharyngeal swab, which should be swabbed. Neonatal throat should be swabbed sufficiently so that these swabs are to have enough mucus or saliva on the baby, on the swab, baby saliva or baby mucus on the swab. And both these swabs should be placed in the viral transport media and capped, and should be transported to the virology lab as per the instructions of the virology. Now, these tests are usually, what tests are performed? Usually we perform RT-PCR, polymerase chain reaction, and by these polymerase chain reaction we come to know the turnaround time is usually 10 to 12 hours, and after 10 to 12 hours we come to know whether the test is positive or negative. So if the test is positive, this means the baby is positive. If the test is negative, then we can't say the baby is negative, because you need to have one more swab at the end of day 5. If both the swabs are negative, then you can say the baby is negative. Apart from these nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs for virology, the routine sampling also poses a biohazard, and thus they should be prevented. Unnecessary sampling should be prevented. If you are able to measure oxygenation with the help of the pulse oximeters, good, and baby is doing well, then there is no need for doing blood gas estimation. But if the baby is ventilated, you want to do blood gas estimation, you should make sure that you have not make sure, but preferably that you should send these investigations in your in-house thing. But if you're not in-house things, then enough, precaution should be taken, that sample should be transported in the biohazard prevention box, and should be sufficiently labeled. And even the routine sampling like biochemistry sampling and so routine sampling, there is no routine sampling in these cases. They should be sent only when it is required, and once it is required, then you should send in the proper taking proper precautions in the box which is labeled as a biohazard. So these are some of the disinfection practices which we have developed for our unit. So this is from our protocol. So these are some of the high contact surfaces, door handle and knobs which are frequently coming in contact, telephones, ventilator knobs, bed rails, etc. So they should be cleaned every 3 to 4 hourly by 1% hypochlorite solution by the hospital attendants. Other high contact surfaces like stair rails and wall areas around the toilets, they also be to be cleaned every 3 to 4 hourly. Low contact surfaces like room walls, mirrors, floors, biomedical waste bins, so they should be cleaned as and when emptied, or once a day, or maybe twice in a day with 1% hypochlorite solution. Certain items which are coming in the contact of the baby and they are fomites like stethoscope, PP cuff, thermometer and injection tray. I'm sorry, excuse me. They should be disinfected after every use by using 70% alcohol by the bedside nurse. So regarding the biomedical waste disposal, the details are beyond the scope of this lecture, but but there are potentially two type of disposals. One is disposables. They should be collected, and they should be by taking adequate precaution, they should be sent for incineration in the biohazard, the yellow box, and the yellow double enveloped yellow polythene covers with the biohazard label. And all reusable items like for example visors or goggles, they should be they should be dipped in they can be disinfected and put to your use. But there should be there amongst them also there will be two types of reusable items. So one will be cloth items, for example gowns, etc., or reusable PPEs. If you have access to those, they can be dipped. They should be dipped in 1% hypochlorite solution, which is freshly prepared. They should remain dipped in 20 to 30 minutes, and after that they should be removed and they should be sent for washing and autoclaving. Plastics, for example, goggles and visors, they should be cleaned with the alcohol swabs, and they should be sent for ETO for sterilization, and they can be reused if the such facilities exist in your hospital. The second situation, if the mother is COVID suspect. So if the mother is COVID suspect, there are the same protocols as mother is COVID positive. As we discussed, the COVID positive, except for the fact that baby is going to go in the facility in which the baby, so mother can be positive, mother can be negative, we don't know. So the baby is to go in the isolation facility, and the samples to be mother sample to be sent. If the mother samples are negative, the baby should be quickly taken out from this nursery and from this isolation facility and sent to the regular nursery or to the mother, depending upon the case to case, whichever case you are dealing with. If the baby is positive, then the baby should be sent to the COVID positive separate facilities. If the neonates are COVID positive or suspect, now which are those COVID positive? So what is the definition of suspect? The definition is that if the baby has history of exposure. Now the history of exposure can be from the two sources, from the mother. So from the mother, if the baby is coming in the mother has COVID-19 infection within 14 days prior to birth, or from the environment, which is history of contact in the postnatal period with persons including mother or other family members of the household which are COVID positive, or direct healthcare provider who are COVID positive, or other visitors who are COVID positive. So if they have history of contact, such babies will become suspect. Irrespective of the history of exposure, if the baby is coming with the severe acute respiratory infections or pneumonias, they are also a suspect. So now these babies who are coming with, so one must be aware that usually these SARIs are defined once if you have fever, if you have shortness of breath, etc. cough, etc. But it is possible that in neonatal age group you might or might not have fever. Like in the previous report of 4 neonates who were positive with COVID, only 2 had fever. So some of them might not have fever. So presence of fever does not absence of fever does not make you prone for doesn't rule out SARI. So there should be 2 criteria. A, irrespective of fever, if the baby is having respiratory distress or pneumonia and there is no alternative explanation for that, this baby becomes COVID suspect, and you should sample this baby and you should isolate this baby immediately and send samples till the baby depending upon the sample, the baby can be positive or negative. So the clinical management, if the baby is coming COVID positive, the principles of management are same. The temperature should be managed. The thermal control should be, baby should be nursed in thermoneutral zone. The aerosol generating procedure should be minimized. If you are ventilating, you can take help of HME filters, as we have discussed. If you have giving CPAP, the expiratory limb should be there inside, should be there inside the neonatal incubator. There is no pharmacological management till date, so that's out of question. The supportive care, all possible supportive care, including your airway, breathing, circulation, dextrose, and sampling, etc., as should be same. The principles are same, which we have discussed previously. Regarding the follow-ups, regarding the sampling should be done on these babies on the regular interval, depending upon your hospital, hospital protocols. However, if the babies are, if the babies are declared negative once 2 RT-PCR tests are consecutive to RT-PCR tests are negative, only then the any positive neonate is declared to be cured. And these are nasopharyngeal, and as I've said, that nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs. So if 2 consecutive swabs are negative, then these babies are said to be declared negative, and depending upon their status, they can be either discharged if they are mildly symptomatic, or they can be taken or asymptomatic and can be taken care of at home, or if they are still require hospitalization, then they should be continued in the hospital in the isolation facilities. So the take-home messages from this presentation are: we have to have high index of suspicion. All asymptomatic mothers, all mothers coming from, all symptomatic mothers or all asymptomatic as well as symptomatic mothers coming from hotspot areas, all children with SARI, neonates with SARI, and all exposed to contacts, they should be screened. High index of suspicion should be there and they should be screened, and one should isolate such type of babies till you have a clear answer to their tests or access to the mother's COVID status. Immediate cord clamping should be done. There is no question of delayed cord clamping as far as India is concerned as of now. Immediate isolation of the neonate should be done. The mother and neonates, depending upon the mother and neonate suspect and COVID status, there can be various permutation and combination. However, if the neonate is COVID positive, the baby can be sent with the mother if the mother is positive. It can be discharged if the baby is asymptomatic enough to be discharged, or if requires hospitalization can continue in the isolation nursery. And if the neonate is COVID negative, it can be discharged or it can be continued in the routine nursery, as we are doing neonatal care in day-to-day scenarios. Neonatal testing should be done once between 48 to 72 hours and at 5 days, repeated at 5 days. If it is both are negative, then you declare that it is negative, and declare babies who are previously positive declare negative if they 2 consecutive RT-PCR tests are negative. So with this, I hope I trust that we have gained some insights from this presentation. I'll be happy to answer you if you have any queries. Over to Dr. Madhu, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sajan. That was really very useful and very insightful. So now I open the session for the discussion, and I request all the panelists to be
Sorry, I'm
there.
not able to hear any voice.
You're not able to hear? Hello? Is it audible, Dr. Shiv?
Yeah.
Now
it is audible. Yeah, please.
Now it is audible. Okay. So we have questions from the participants. Let's take that. So first question is to Dr. Meenakshi. So Dr. Meenakshi, actually, I responded to that. I will be taking that question afterwards, but so it's not visible here. But the question to you is, Dr. Meenakshi, like they were asking one of the attendees that whether two samples are to be taken before discharge of the postnatal mother. Like, is there any criteria of taking the samples? That
Yes,
like for neonates, Dr. Sajan has mentioned that two samples has to be negative and day 48 hours and 5 days, I think he mentioned. So,
yes,
and what about,
am I audible, Dr. Madhu?
yeah, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yes, you're right. We need to take two samples before we declare a patient negative or recovered. And this is the recommendation or strategy from ICMR as well. Any patient we are admitting as a COVID positive, we do testing once at the time of diagnosis and two at the time of discharge at the gap of 24 hours. And
Okay.
if the two are negative, then we declare her as a negative and recovered patient, and then we discharge the patient.
Okay. Thank you. So, there are many questions I think related to Dr. Sajan. First is, can Deleuze mucus extractor be used for suctioning?
Oh my God, this will be this will be this will be disastrous.
Okay.
You are suctioning directly inside you. No, that is not advisable.
Not advisable. Great.
Yes. So you
Next.
are protecting. So remember that once we are resuscitating these neonates, or we are doing day-to-day care on these neonates, we are in the full attire, which includes an essential and integral component of this is N95 mask. Once the mask is on, we must never ever I will just like to throw light on N95 mask. The N95 mask is designed in a way it creates a seal around your mouth so that you are protected through potential aerosols, potential droplets. One must not fiddle with the N95 mask, because not only it will increase the chances of leaking the seal, also it will increase chances of your potential hands are becoming contact with your N95 mask and will cause problems. So once we have the the N95 mask on, then we can't use, or we can't use anything near to the mouth, and thus the daily suction is out of question. We should use the hospital suction apparatus. If not, then foot operated suction facility should be created.
Okay, thank you. Next question is also for you. Sir, can we provide skin-to-skin contact between mother and newborn without interruption if mother is suspect or positive COVID-19?
Okay, so that's a good question, because I can understand the dilemma which the participants must be facing, because the big bodies like RCPCH, CDC, etc., they are WHO, they are advocating early skin-to-skin contact after the birth of the baby. But at the same time, as I have discussed during my presentation, that there should be enough nursing care facility should be available to help the mother as well as to help the baby. If that is not, if we can't ensure the respiratory hygiene of the mother, and if we can't have enough nursing care, or adequate or nursing care, then it will be more dangerous, it will be harmful. So one should not think of doing early skin to skin contact or breastfeeding in developing countries settings. Yes, if you are in a setting where you have in a corporate like thing, where you have enough facilities available, you have enough nursing care facilities available, or even in the public facility when there is no dearth of resources, especially manpower resources, and if you catch hold of the caregivers who are not the birth partners, or who are not exposed to the coronavirus, then you can exercise these options. But otherwise, it will not be wise at this juncture.
Yeah, even the father can be like father can give
No,
skin to skin contact.
no. I think it is clear that
No.
all potential health family
Okay.
members, they are
Contacts.
contacts. They are
Hmm.
quarantined.
Okay.
So it is the family birth partner is out of question.
Hmm.
the RCPCH says even if you do, you do other than the birth partners. So that's out of
That's
question.
a very, very important question.
Yeah.
Next question is,
And sorry,
yeah,
I want to add, if you are calling somebody, they may or may not be aware of of the
restricted.
potential hazards. So you need to take their consent. A well-informed consent should be taken, and I'm not sure whether you can find in this scenario, you can find any
Difficult.
person who is ready to take care of your COVID positive in the COVID positive ward, take care of your baby. I'm really doubtful.
I agree. So next is, should there be separate NICU for COVID suspected newborn? I think you
Yes,
covered this.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So at this stage, very easy to presume regarding sample taking technique, but practically very difficult as far as
Yes.
oropharyngeal swab is concerned.
Yeah.
So
So
very,
oropharyngeal swab is easy. I think nasopharyngeal swab is having problem because if you read the literature also, they say that nasopharyngeal only few reports mention about nasal swab. Majority of the reports say throat swab. And possibly because negotiating nasopharynx nose to reach in nasopharynx might be tricky at in certain babies, especially if the babies are preterm, the babies are having nasal anatomy, distorted nasal anatomy. So they can be, or the the floor of the nose is directly is little horizontal and parallel to the palate. So if you are at an angle to the nose as in adults, then you will not be able to reach the nasopharynx. So one has to go right parallel to the palate and try to negotiate. But in many instances you will not be able to negotiate. In that case, there are I've read the report where they say that the turbinate, it is, even if it is taken from the turbinate, it can capture the viral load. So even if you are not able to negotiate to the nasopharynx, you can negotiate the nose, as well as you send two samples, one from nose, one from oropharynx, and then send this sample together in the viral transport media.
pooling can be done, like both pooling of these swabs.
Yeah,
One
they should
from,
be. They must be, because
yeah.
it is because of the two reasons. So
Hmm.
number one is that your viral load is less
Yeah.
in the neonates, and the receptors are not that well developed. So basically,
Hmm.
you may or may not find enough if you are sending. There might be false negative if you are sending only one sample. So
Yeah.
this is true across any viral specimen taken from the neonates. Even if you are taking H1N1, you should send two. Whether
Thank
two are
you.
enough, and nobody knows, but two is bare minimum which you have to send.
Very good.
Okay.
So next is pharmacological management of COVID positive neonate. You
No,
covered, I think.
so this is
No,
not possible.
understood.
Only supportive care. And
Supportive care.
luckily, the neonates are very less symptomatic, and they are okay with only supportive care. So that's
Okay.
okay.
So, stage is set to develop infrastructure now and post-pandemic arena. Yes, we agree that now the stage is set. So, Dr. Sarjan, if you can add, like in PGI, you have already like segregated these spaces.
Yeah. We have segregated.
Okay.
So far we are not having any positive COVID positive cases, as Professor Meenakshi has also told. So
Hmm.
what we are having is suspects. So
Hmm.
because Chandigarh is a containment zone, so all mothers who are coming with pregnancy to the facility, they are automatically categorized as suspect. But in
Yeah.
areas which are not containment zone, which are green zones, all mothers who are symptomatic, like they are coming with SARI or ILIs, they are becoming a suspect, and they should be separated, and the sample should be sent. And once the sample is available, maybe turnaround time of say 12 hours or so, in depending upon your facility, then we can divide them into COVID positive or COVID negative.
So, next question also, I think you've covered. If both mother and baby are positive, then they can be kept together.
If baby is asymptomatic,
If, yeah.
if baby is
If baby is
symptomatic,
symptomatic,
yeah,
yeah,
if
then
symptomatic,
so,
then baby should be in the NICU. I mean,
yeah,
no, isolation
not
NICU.
but
Yeah, yeah,
separate.
yeah, yeah.
So, Dr. Sarjan, if mother is suspect, not proven, should we give baby to mother before her test results come?
So if mother is suspect and not proven, no, I
Yeah.
don't think so we should give, because till the mother's condition is clear, mother COVID condition is clear, we should not take any decision. So as soon as the mother condition is clear, if mother is suspect, you have and the baby is delivered, you should isolate and send it to the nursery, so isolation facility. So if the baby is if the mother is negative, the baby requires the baby is asymptomatic, send to mother. If the baby requires NICU care, send to NICU, routine NICU. If the mother is positive and the baby is also positive, the baby can continue in the isolation facility. If the baby is negative, baby can be discharged or continue in a nursery depending upon the the requirement of the baby. But however, if the baby is negative, such baby is negative, then the baby can be discharged. If the baby is dischargeable, should be discharged and can be taken care at home by someone who is ready to take care of the baby. And if not, then
So,
yeah, baby should be sent in regular nurseries to. Yeah. So,
so
such a
babies has to be treated as individual entities. I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
There are various permutation and combination, and we know we are having really tough time in PGI because daily the situation is so fluid. Daily the recommendation is changing. It is. Although you may say that there are no patients, but we are on the toes 24 hours.
I mean, there are plenty of questions. I can take a few more. Like,
Yeah, sure.
when should the repeat sample be collected after getting a positive sample?
So that depends upon your hospital facilities. Once it is positive, then the baby is positive. So depending upon your laboratory, whatever viral load it can cater to. So it can be they maybe after every 48 hours. Some facilities can do twice a week. So depending upon
Dr.
your
Meenakshi said 24 hours. Within 24 hours, if like for postnatal cases, you said, Dr. Meenakshi, that second sample can be sent, even if it is positive.
No, if it is a positive, then the sample has to be repeated in 7 days. If it is a negative,
Then 24 hours.
then it
Yeah.
will be repeated in 24 hours, and the patient will be declared as a recovered patient.
Mhm.
So this is
Not
as far as
in-
adults is concerned. Other adults
Yeah.
are
yeah,
concerned. So
yeah,
in
yeah.
neonates, it is 48 or 72 hours, the first
And
sample.
then.
And if
Mm.
somebody has sent sample on the day one, immediately after the birth of the baby, then they should not be counted as a first sample. This should not be counted in the first sample. The first sample is 48 or to 72 hours, and the second sample is day 5. So if both are
Irrespective of the
negative,
result. Irrespective of the result.
uh, yeah, irrespective of the result. Also, if it is positive, it is anyway positive. There is no point.
Yeah. There is
So
no
if it is
point of.
negative, to declare.
Mm.
So if these samples are for the so these are for the mothers who are COVID positive. So if the COVID positive mother is delivering a baby, the first sample is sent after 48 or to 72 hours. If the sample is positive, that this baby is declared positive. Both mother and babies are positive. If it is negative, then to declare baby is
Then
negative, you
repeat.
send another sample after 5 days.
Right. Once recovered and test negative, can we say that person is now immune to COVID-19?
That's a big, bold statement.
Debatable.
At, the, at this
Because
moment, at this
because
moment,
Yeah.
because in
Yeah.
China the patient has come back. The one patient who was recovered has come back with the infection. So it's a big statement to state at this moment. We are not very
Yeah.
sure. We are not very
Evidence is not enough, I would say. The evidence is not enough. We do not know. So, I mean, it's better to assume that the person may not be. Yeah. matlab,
sure.
we do not have enough evidence. So,
so I
any
agree
role of
with you.
anal.
Sorry, I agree with
Sorry.
you. I agree with both of you. Just to add that, the virus has smarter. So they are having their, their strains going on. Their brothers and sisters are yet to come. And one of the reasons why the previously, so genetic, mutations, reassortments, etc. It's a big question now. So one can't be sure that it is immune.
Yeah.
Immune to that particular strain is fine. But if there
Hmm.
are various strains, they can be troublesome things,
Yeah.
troublesome
And they're
situation for the
asking
future.
next, any role of anal swabs?
Yeah, so I purposefully did not touch upon this. So I would like you to show. Can I show my screen once
Yeah,
again?
sure,
Share
sure.
my screen.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay. So I was sure somebody is going to ask something. This question
Good.
like this. Oh, sorry, I deleted.
Oh,
So there is a report, in which a baby who was 3 months old, who was positive nasopharyngeal, who was symptomatic and nasopharyngeal swab was positive. incidentally, the anal swab was positive too, and the anal swab continued to be positive for a longer duration, much longer duration than the nasopharyngeal swabs. So while the baby was last nasopharyngeal swab was positive on day 10, then oropharyngeal swab, the anal swabs were positive till day 30. So the anal swabs positivity can be there much longer than the nasopharyngeal swabs, but that should not be reason to withhold declare the baby as positive, because there is no fecal-oral transmission has not been proven yet. So although the theoretical some
Theoretical evidence is
things,
there, yeah.
so one should take caution. So there is no clear-cut consensus on the biomedical waste disposal on this, but one should take enough precaution, and one should take care of cautionary handling these babies.
So next question is, so in separate babies, we have to give top spoon or bottle feed, still mother is declared negative on
Yeah.
PCR negative.
Yeah. So as the babies are immediately isolated, so then these babies should be given top fed till their status is not clear. But if you have a facility where the the mother can, if you have enough facility, as I discussed, it meets the prerequisite, the healthcare facility or whole hospital meets the prerequisite of giving breastfeeding. One can exercise that. If not, then if you can safely and hygienically produce expressed breast milk, while the mother is wearing N95 mask, or the mother is taking enough hygiene of her hands and taking care of the breast hygiene, using breast milk pumps, etc., and expressing, and there is safe transport can be assured in that facility, one can use express breast milk. Short of these facilities, I think because there are huge resources are diverted towards all these things, I'm not sure whether we are in a position to safely give. Yes, in future might maybe, but as of now we should continue with the top milk.
So in our
This
place,
question.
another question is, in our place, swab report comes after 5 days. So what should we do with the baby till 5 days of suspected mother?
Should be continued as a suspect till then. Once the condition is not clear. Yeah.
Okay, I think that was all. So there's some feedback that they're saying thanks, and yeah. So with this,
Dr. Madhu, I just wanted to chip in, Dr. Vimla from UNFPA.
so
And
yeah.
hello.
So yeah, we have Dr. Vimla. Yeah, please, Dr. Vimla.
Yes. First of all, thank you to the esteemed faculty of PI Chandigarh for taking forward and enlightening all the participants with the clinical protocols. But at the same time, I would like to emphasize on one thing, which is about the public health. This is a pandemic which is evolving. There are issues which are unknown, areas are there which we don't know how things will be, how they will come up in the near future. But at the same time, we have to have the public health perspective. We have to continue with the postpartum family planning services that includes PPIUCD, and there are no, as per our guidelines, PPIUCD insertions are recommended, and we should not stop these services, because it would have, all these programs are going to have a larger public health implication if we stop pre-existing programs. Yes, interval IUCDs should not be given at this time or deferred till the situation improves. That was one point I wanted to make. And second is because neonates, fortunately, the newborns have a very low mortality till, and I understand the limited evidences around it, but the practices for other important issues, breastfeeding, skin to skin contact, that is important. And I totally agree with Dr. Saini that yes, what our Indian Federation is saying, but WHO and UN agencies, whatever we are endorsing, we are also trying to understand the public health implications around these issues. So that was one point I just wanted to make. Thank you so much.
I would also like to add. Yeah, I would also like to add something to this. Even FIGO recommends that PPIUCD should be done As far as the Indian scenario is concerned, I don't know how much is the feasibility. But they say the rate of abortions and the rate of unplanned pregnancies is going to increase because accessibility to family planning services is not that much at this time. So PPIU, because this is the time when the patient is coming to you, and we should not let go of this opportunity to insert PPI-UCD. And the same thing is a lot of countries have done tubectomies with cesareans, and they have not found any adverse reactions. It depends on the person's patient's condition, basically. If it is a mild case or an asymptomatic positive case, I think it can be done.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Bimla and Dr. Nina. Actually, we have a next webinar on family planning services. So I deliberately did not spend much time on this because on 2nd May, we have a next webinar on this topic. But thank you for your feedback. And I would really like to thank Dr. Sajan and Dr. Meenakshi for very useful, very insightful talk. And the comments which we are receiving from the participants is also, they are very thankful and they have really gained a lot. Thank you so much. With this, we end this session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.